What's up, Menace soldiers? I'm the Alliance and welcome back to the video. Today we're going to be doing an interesting video because today I'm going to be labeling the 10 biggest questions that we didn't really get answered in the Rise of Skywalker that will probably get answered at some point in like a book or a TV show or something like that. So before I begin with this list, I just wanted to say there will be spoilers. So if you haven't seen the Rise of Skywalker yet, I recommend watching that first, then coming back to this video, and then we can discuss it. Also, before I begin, what were some questions that you guys were left off with in the end of the film? What was the question in your head when you were done with the movie, you stood up and you're walking out of the theater? What popped in your head? What made you go, wait, but what about this? Let me know in the comments below. Maybe we can start a discussion and we can just kind of bring all this stuff up so then someday Star Wars can actually answer them. I mean, maybe not, probably not, but a man can dream, can't he? A man can dream. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, please consider liking, subscribing, turn notifications for more. And with that said, guys, let's begin. Okay, and starting with number 10, this is probably the biggest question I had since The Force Awakens came out back in 2015. Where exactly did Maz get Luke Skywalker's lightsaber? This was actually something that I thought was going to get brought up in the film, even just have Maz just kind of casually explain it to another rebel in the background, or, maybe even show a scene of how she did acquire it. But there's nothing that really explains it. This isn't going to affect the entire Star Wars universe as a whole. This isn't going to blow open the floodgates. Do you know what I mean? This isn't like a Snoke death type of situation where we needed that explained. But for me personally, and maybe for a lot of you guys out there, I just want to know where this lightsaber came from. I want to know where she got it. And I explained this before, and I think this would have been really simple to do in the Rise of Skywalker. Maybe when they were doing a scanning shot in the film, they could have had her kind of explaining to rebels in the background, being like, hey, and this is how I got this lightsaber because of this one drunk trader who traded it to me, who found it in the Cloud City junk pile or something like that. That's pretty simple, something along those lines. A quick little scanning shot where you hear that explanation. It doesn't really impact the story at all, and it's super easy to do. I don't know, guys. I think a lot of the other questions on this are more important, but for me, I just really want to know how she got that lightsaber. So let me know in the comments below for all of these things. Do you think that these are important? Do you think that they're not important? Even if they aren't important, would you like to actually know them? Would you like to see maybe a comic explain this at some point in the future? Let me know in the comments below. With that said though, we're moving on to number 9. At number 9, this one is a big one too. How exactly does the rule of 2 work now? So in the past, the rule of 2 was that there was the apprentice, there was the master, and the apprentice would kill the master with the knowledge known from that master. But now the rule of 2 kind of is flipped on its head because Palpatine almost introduces this idea. There's a force essence that is moving from apprentice to master, and it keeps on going from there and for always until, of course, I guess the master gets killed by something that isn't a evil person. I don't exactly know how that works, but it does introduce this interesting idea that Palpatine is actually a bunch of past Sith combined into one body, and this soul just kind of gets transferred from body to body. So I think that's a really cool concept, especially when you consider the fact that the Jedi are kind of like that, but not really. So it's interesting because it introduces the idea that while the Jedi pass on their knowledge, the Sith pass on their souls and their power. And it's interesting how that would be true. Maybe I'm interpreting that wrong, but that's what I detected from that entire thing that they had with Palpatine explaining that to Rey. For if Rey kills Palpatine, then she would absorb him inside of her. But it's I want more explanation on that because that's a really cool concept, but we haven't had anything on that so far. So I'd like to see that kind of explored in a comic book or a movie at some point in the future. Now, this would also explain why Palpatine is so powerful. It's not just because he is a strong dark side user, it's because he himself is an ancient Sith soul that has been moving on from person to person ever since maybe Darth Bane, because Darth Bane was the one who created the rule of 2. So perhaps Bane has been inside of every single Force user up until Palpatine. So that's an interesting concept. I don't exactly know how they're going to tackle it, or maybe they'll just kind of leave it go. But I would like to see a little more explanation on this. But then again, maybe that's just me. At number 8, this one isn't really as much of a big mystery as much as it's kind of why did this character do this? So in Star Wars Episode 9, there is a couple points in the film where Finn is trying to tell Rey something, and you're supposed to allude to the idea that he's trying to explain that he loves her. And so that's what I initially thought too. But later on, if you connect the dots, he was actually trying to tell her that he is force sensitive, but he didn't want to tell anybody else. And the question was, why wouldn't you want to tell Poe? Like, why would Poe care if you were force sensitive? I don't really know what that whole concept was. I don't know if that was kind of like a side plot thing they tried to introduce, like this little thing just to kind of keep the viewers entertained with the idea that Finn is actually in love with Rey or something like that. I don't really know where that came from. Now, apparently there is a deleted scene where Finn actually does tell Rey, but that got taken out because it is ultimately not very dynamic with the rest of the story, which I understand you kind of have to do that when you're making a movie. But I do think there should be like some type of explanation, and this could be in a comic book that's written around like maybe before episode 9 actually comes out, or even maybe after episode 9, where it just kind of gives a brief explanation onto why Finn didn't want to tell Poe. And that can just be a brief little throwaway line at some point in a book or a comic book. Now at number 7, and this is probably one of the biggest things when it comes to this movie, how exactly did Palpatine come back? Now in the movie, he says that the dark side is, you know, a mysterious thing that some consider to be unnatural. And we realize that. This is something that he said in episode 3. Now, I believe that they brought back up this line to kind of explain away the reason why he's back without having to go into fuller detail. But I definitely want to see, and I'm almost certain we're going to get this eventually, some type of book or a comic book or maybe even a future movie kind of explaining how this came to be. Because currently we don't exactly know how he came back. So for right now, I'm under the understanding that Palpatine was not actually killed on the Death Star. It was one of his clones. And then the real Palpatine was actually still back on that planet of his. And he was kind of just like toying with the idea where he was going to go next. And then he made Snoke. Now, I don't know exactly if that is true. Maybe they're leaving it up to your interpretation on exactly how he came back. But for me, for something so big as this, with Palpatine coming back, I think we do need a little more explanation on exactly how it is. So I'm almost certain we'll get a book on it in the future or a comic book, but that was probably something they should have further explained instead of just being like, oh, he's back because the dark side works in mysterious ways. Ooh. I don't know if I necessarily like it. I'm not against it, but I definitely think there should be more explanation onto that. All right, and at number 6, how exactly does a force memory work? And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, in the one scene where Han Solo shows up, everyone's kind of like, wait, how exactly is he back? That doesn't make any sense. And the way that they kind of explain it away is that Kylo is dipping into his memories to kind of create this force essence of Han Solo. And while I'm not against that idea, I'm just curious on how exactly that works. I mean, in my opinion, this entire scene should have been between Kylo and Anakin. You know, for Anakin knows exactly what Kylo has gone through. So Anakin should have been the one to be standing there speaking to his grandson. I love Han, but that should have been Anakin's scene. However, with this whole situation, how exactly does this whole memory thing work? Because that's not actually Han speaking to him, right? I mean, maybe it is Han speaking to him. Maybe he can connect to the Force. And although Han isn't actually force sensitive, maybe he could actually pull his soul through the Force and use a memory to... See, I don't know how this works. Like, I want this explained a little better, maybe in a future comic book or something like that. This needs better explanation because I just don't really get it. Okay, and at number 5, and this is kind of more of like a continuity error, I guess you could say. But how exactly does Force Heal work? And why haven't we seen it in the past? But the biggest question, besides why haven't we seen it, was how exactly does it work? Because we saw Rey stab Kylo right through the stomach. And Kylo's like sitting there dying. And then Rey goes over and she heals him. And it like regrows like scar tissue and everything on him. So it makes me wonder how exactly that works because, you know, when Qui-Gon got stabbed, couldn't Obi-Wan be able to do that if he was taught to do it? Could he do that? Or is it just like a Rey and Kylo power because they're supposed to be like the last of the dark and light? So maybe they're just like ultimately more powerful in the Force, so they're able to do that. Now in the games and even in some canon, there have been Jedi who can do Force healing, but not to this extent. Rey pretty much like rejuvenated. It was like a Force rejuvenate. It was almost like a Sensu bean from Dragon Ball Z. It healed him right away. And it also raises the question, instead of like the Jedi in the past, what they would do is they would like, oh, you have a scratch. They'd be like, okay, I can help you, but I'm not going to heal it all the way. I can't do that, but I can pretty much make the pain go away. I can soothe you, and I can kind of close up the wound, but I won't be able to actually like grow your skin back. But Rey was actually able to regrow Kylo's scar tissue and make it as if it wasn't even there anymore. So it's like, what? How is that done? Because that is a completely different thing from force healing. To heal someone, you can make their cut go away. But could you possibly like make a hand grow back if someone lost it? You know, if Rey lost her arm, could she just be like, or just grow it back in seconds? You know, I want to know more about this because this is a very cool idea to introduce into a film, but then not to really have any true explanation on how it's done. I mean, the reason why I'm bringing this up too is because later on when Palpatine like draws the power from Kylo and Rey, he has like no fingers, and then his fingers start to grow back and he starts to become human again. And it's like, where is this coming from? And how powerful can this power be? Because you could potentially save anyone. Now, speaking of force heal, I'm actually going to go into my number 4 here, and this is going to go into the very end of the film when Kylo sacrifices himself to save Rey. But why did he die in doing it? I don't know if maybe it's because he isn't like a force healer himself. Like Rey has that ability to do that, so maybe when she healed him, she could save him, but then when he healed her, he died. But my whole thing is, I just want more explanation on this whole situation, because earlier, Rey stabs Kylo. Kylo's dying. Like, he's about to die. But then Rey heals him. She saves his life. But then later on, Rey does die. And Kylo goes in and he heals her back to good, but then he dies. So it makes me wonder, like, how exactly is that done? Because Kylo wasn't mortally wounded at that point in the film. So what killed him? Was it the fact that he had to give the rest of his essence into Rey to keep her alive? Or what exactly was that? I just want more explanation on all this stuff, guys, because it does raise a big point. Is this something that the movie just oversighted? Or is there an actual explanation on how this ability works? So, like I said, my number 5 and 4 kind of go hand in hand. I'd like my continuity to be like nice and good. And this kind of is a continuity breaking thing. So I'd like to kind of find out how exactly that works. Okay, number 3, and this is kind of my thing for both The Force Awakens and Episode 8. But where are all the Force ghosts? You know, at the end of Episode 6, we saw Anakin, we saw Yoda, we saw Obi-Wan. At the end of Episode 9, we hear a bunch of different Jedi voices, including Ahsoka, Mace Windu's in there, Anakin's in there, Obi-Wan's in there, Yoda's in there, Qui-Gon's in there. And I'm wondering, where were those Force ghosts this entire time? Why didn't they show up to help out our characters? It kind of seems like they dropped the ball in that type of situation. I don't know if maybe there was a scheduling error for some of the other actors to come and join, which would make sense. But there definitely seems to be something missing there, in my opinion. Now, this was an issue with The Force Awakens and Episode 8. Initially, I thought that maybe it's because Snoke's power is so strong that he is able to kind of use the dark side to block out the light side Force ghosts, so that's why they couldn't show up. But then we see later on Oct 2, Yoda showed up, and he's just like, hey, here I am. And I was thinking, oh, okay, well, you know, Luke blocked out the Force from himself, but that doesn't mean the Force ghosts don't exist anymore. So that was kind of Yoda showing up to kind of say, hey, what's up, Luke? Give him a little pep talk. But then that's when Episode 9 comes around, and I was thinking, oh, maybe Palpatine was blocking all these Force ghosts this entire time. But that can't be true either, because Luke later shows up in this film and talks to Rey. So I'm just like, I want more explanation on why these Force ghosts aren't showing up. That's why I definitely think that one scene where Kylo and Han talk, Han should have been replaced with Anakin Skywalker. I think that would have fixed a lot of issues. We would have saw another Force ghost. So I'm just wondering, where are the Force ghosts? Maybe explain it in a comic book, movie, like with all these, in a book. I don't care, just give me some type of explanation. Now we come to our number 2, and I'm almost certain we're gonna get something on this in the future, but I wanna know where Rey got her new lightsaber and her new lightsaber crystal. That's pretty much all it is. I'd like to speculate on where she got it, but I actually have no idea. So, yeah, just let us know. Eventually, Disney, movie, TV show, book. We covered all this and almost all the other ones. So, let us know. And at number 1, and this one is kind of cheating, I guess, because we're definitely going to get something on the future for all of these questions. But what will happen next? You know, will Poe become a Republic general for like their new military? Will Rey start her new Jedi Academy? There was kind of a hint that she might do that, but we don't know. So I I'd like to possibly have more explanation on that in the future. And then of course, this is something that I'm almost certain they're going to do eventually, but will Finn become Force sensitive? His entire arc, I guess you could say, in this movie, he didn't really have an arc, I guess, in this film, but at least he had like a mystery to him, like what he was trying to tell Rey. And initially, the entire film, we're thinking he's going to, you know, tell her he loves her, which that's what I at least thought initially. And then we eventually find out that he actually wanted to tell her. Well, we don't actually find it out. We have to allude to the idea, but like I mentioned earlier, it's just one of those things you have to connect the dots on your own. But he is Force sensitive and he wants to tell Rey that. So that introduces a pretty interesting dynamic to possibly explore in maybe episode 10. Or another spin-off film, which I'm almost certain we're gonna get. So yeah, like I said, this one's kind of cheating because we're definitely gonna get all of these answered at some point in the future. But this movie actually made me like all three of these characters. In the past, I kind of thought they were okay, but this one made me like them because they were actually all together and they felt real, and the chemistry between them was really good. So I'd like to see these characters in the future, even if it is something that isn't like they're the main character specifically, but at least if I hear something about them, that'd be pretty dope. So that's it for this video, guys. What are some of the questions that you had when you left the Rise of Skywalker that you want to hear answered? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you later. Peace.